I'd like to call this meeting to order. Okay, Colleen, you can make a motion.
I would like to make, oh, I don't need that, do I?
I say for,
I'll make a motion. Oh, sorry. I think it turns out. I'd like to make a motion to convene into executive session for the approval of executive session minutes from February 4th, 2025, approval of executive session minutes from February 13th, 2025, regarding potential litigation with the vendor pursuant to RIGL 42465A2, and for collective bargaining pursuant to RIGL 42465A2. That is the contract with the school secretaries.
do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
I'd like to call this meeting to order and have everyone stand to pledge allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I'd like to report that there were no votes taken in executive session. And we're going to go right into our budget workshop. Superintendent's report. Do you want to do your report first?
So, this is gonna be a little different than any other, superintendent's report. My report tonight is going to be this budget workshop. Given the work that we have to do around this budget as a group, my focus is gonna be on the budget, and the work that Stephanie and I have done in collaboration with the building principals to take, all of the requests that we've received, start to build a draft budget for this committee's review and recommendations. And we have some potential cuts that we'd like to share with you and get some feedback around and move through this process. So hopefully by the end of tonight, we will have some direction from the committee so that we can go back and make a what should be a final budget to present to you for your review and approval. Makes sense. Okay. So I'm gonna start by turning it over to Stephanie to talk to you about, we're gonna start with revenue.
So normally this is more of sort of a conversation, so I'm gonna not necessarily presenting, more talking about the budget. So at our last meeting, the building administrators came in and they made their presentations, talking about what they needed in their buildings after talking to their department heads. I did put that into an Excel, and it is up there. Chris, do you have the proposed asks up, or you have the budget to actual? I had a lot of documents today, so. So I did put all of those asks into a Excel, and then I also reviewed a lot of our contractual items to make sure that we were putting in enough for what we would need. There were some areas that were not enough, and those needed to be pumped up as well. So when we put all that together, we ended up at a 10.89% increase, which obviously is not going to happen. So I just wanted to show that. Yes, it's a starting point. I wanted to show that because I think it's important to, kind of show, the needs, and this is where we're at. So then I made another spreadsheet, if you want to pull that one up, as a proposed workshop budget. I think I sent it to you in tandem, so it might be below it, but it just has a different name. Hang on, I'll send it to you. I got it. Okay. So, in talking through that one, I wanted to start by looking at the education aid piece. We do have an initial amount that the governor has to approve and has not yet. They did revise it. It wasn't changed much, maybe by 7,000 or so. But my contact at RIDE, as usual, said that that number can change anywhere from 50 to 150,000, as it historically does. So I took, to be conservative, and again, this is just all thinking aloud, 60,000 off of it. So you'll see that that number has changed. Yeah, however you want to.
I just want to talk about that for a minute. It almost sounds too good to be true. in my time here, and you can probably pull the numbers a lot quicker than I can. Based upon the governor's budget, we're looking at a 700, like that was the
Yep.
first number that came out, an increase of $700,000.
Right.
I don't know that I want to know where that number is coming from besides the governor's budget, because I don't trust it. And I've never seen, for the amount of aid that we receive from the state, that is a huge percentage. And I'd be very happy. I don't want to.
So we were a little surprised by that also. If you look at both the RIDE district allocations and then cross-reference it with the governor's budget, there are some districts that are seeing increases and other districts that are experiencing great decreases. That is some of the conversation that is happening with superintendents and the Department of Ed and our legislatures. Generally, these wild swings from one year to
Mhm.
another are impossible for us to budget for and have any stability in our relationships with town councils and with taxpayers. So we recognize that we haven't seen a number like that from RIDE and the governor previously, but we've checked it and they are confirming that that number looks good. Having said that, we all know that there's a lot going on in DC, and whatever is happening there with the federal department may in fact, at some point in time, impact our revenue streams and what we get that is funneled from the feds through the state. So, you know, we have to keep that sort of in the back of our mind. We're not getting a lot of information about what that may or may not look like, but it could impact us.
Is there any, and I know the funding formula is very complex and there's all these things to it. What's driving this right now? Like, is there, and I don't know.
No, they told us, because we were at that meeting,
Uh-huh.
and correct me if I'm wrong, they said the student enrollment, particularly what we're bringing in from CTEs.
That to me doesn't.
They
make
showed
sense.
us, they
Seems
actually,
like
we
it's-
were actually
it's
an
almost-
example. So they
But-
gave examples of different towns, and we were chosen as one of their examples as they were presenting to the state.
But what happens is a CTE student, I don't know that, I'm just implying common sense. The sending district is sending their money with them. Our enrollment numbers they're not
They're
truly
flat.
our students, in the sense that their sending district is paying their cost of education. That's what's not registering in my head. And I'm not trying to be difficult. I just don't want us basing a budget on something that,
Right.
and again, I'm not trying to say no more than the governor or it's almost surreal.
One item that was mentioned, to my understanding, at a meeting I was at, they talked about 3-year changes. So different districts after 3 years they'll reevaluate the quadratic formula. So like the market value of the house, the income level, and then everyone's on a different cycle. So we might get an increase and then somebody else gets a decrease. So there was that kind of talk, but I
So that's why
agree.
there's swings in different towns. It depends when they have that reevaluation.
But I'll believe it when it's the governor signs it. Do you know what I
They
mean?
also
Like I
talked
don't.
about trying to pass legislation for a type of like maintenance of effort from the state. So we don't,
Additionally, I do know that there were, and not just in Situate, but in a multitude of districts, they miscounted the K kids. They
they did.
counted them twice because they were counting them as half-day kids. So I don't know, it was their rule that said everybody had to have full day K. Yeah, I guess they forgot that when they did the funding formula. But so I do know other superintendents today at RISA were saying, yes, our figure was not correct based on the K kids, and that did happen to us.
I do want to say Colleen makes a good point when it comes to the revenue here though, because I do have that number in. Although I took 60,000 off, that's what partially allowed me, you know, with the cuts that, with the suggested cuts, allowed us to get to the 3.35% from the 10%. So if that number drops at all, we're starting at square one again. So just a good talking point of,
I'm not, it just makes me,
Mhm.
it just makes me, and the flip side of that, I guess, if we can swing 700,000 one way one year, what can we swing the other way next year? We can't sustain that, but you know, it's just,
That has exactly been the conversation, yes.
so let's move on to tuitions. Um, so we knew that there was 21 applicants, and I looked at the trends over the years of how many applicants we get to how many students actually come, new. And it's normally around 60% of those applicants. So I did a 71.42% or 15 kids of the 21 as our tuitions in there. So again, that's a fluent number also. But I tried to be, you know, somewhat conservative so that we're not overestimating.
yeah, again, that's, we did that one year. I don't know if you were here yet, Lori. We're trying to close holes and and it's just not fair to anybody
Yep.
because then we're at a loss.
And that's why Stephanie looked at the.
Yeah, no,
trends,
yeah,
And
it's very
and we
easy to
did
say,
not
oh,
take
throw
them.
5 more CTE
Right.
kids on there, but when they don't show up and we're out, you know, 100,000.
So before we leave this page, just to say, you know, you can see the increase over last year at this point of the suggestions I was able to make and the building administrators were able to make, and a 3.35%. And then we can talk about salaries. So,
I'm sorry.
yep, no,
I'm gonna let you go, I promise. So I'm just looking at big numbers right now, and I think that's where we need to start, right? We started with
Yep.
all the asks and then so this is looking at a 3.35%. And I know you had to trim a lot to get there. I don't want to sound like I'm not appreciative of that happening. I certainly am. How does that number impacted by, obviously, we know there is a 4% max for the levy that we can go townwide. But it's also been brought to my attention, and I think the general public knows that there is a shortfall on the town side of a miscalculation, I think, in this year's present budget of like $250,000. So that needs to be absorbed into, and I don't know if there's budget people, but that's going to need to be absorbed into our max levy as well. Are you aware?
Mhm.
So how does that impact our total ask overall? I know it's not an easy, and I don't know that you have all the answers, but that was,
Mhm.
is that over, do you know what I mean? That's
Right.
kind of,
It's something we have to be aware of for sure. Because let's say last year, that mistake wasn't made, we would have had to have been cut more last year, right? Because so if the town would have had that less money last year town-wide, everyone would have had to have gone into the budget and pull out even more. So this year we have to, everyone's going to have to be aware of that when we do our final ask. And this is not our, this is
no,
not our
no,
final ask.
but I'm just looking at globally.
No, you're right.
Where we need to kind of bring it back down again, so
We definitely are.
and
That's in the
I
back.
keep shooting you down, Stephanie. I'm
No,
sorry.
no.
You try and give me good
me
information.
time to
Like,
look at
"Oh,
my
yeah,
notes."
Remind me we're doing this. And I'm like, no, we're not. No, we're not. No, he's not giving it to us. I'm sorry. I'm gonna let you go now.
So in thinking about salaries, and I highlighted in yellow areas that were touched, yellow and red, just for talking points. And again, I'm going to just ask questions because I want to take notes and get from the committee what you'd like me to do so I can have some directions, then I can come back with what you guys want. Obviously, the salaries have steps and all contractual raises in there that we need. It also has the potential for a K teacher depending on enrollment. I just did middle ground, step 5, and just to give you an idea of what that sort of looks like. For salary alone, $65,802. That's without, we're in the middle of, or we're starting negotiations. I don't know how that will change.
Don't forget, we've got 12 steps. So
Mm.
you should start with step 6?
I could do 6, sure. And for benefits, our health increased, which we'll get to in a minute. I don't want to scare everybody just yet. But say 16,000 for health, around 1,000 for dental. We've got a pension at 9,000, TIAA 1,000, Medicare 954, life $63. I'm just giving, just to give you an idea, and that's a step 5. So the salary line also includes and it's an aggressive attrition rate, 3%. We did make that happen last year, and it was difficult. That's approximately $472,485.
And we can come back to that, because I'll let you go through and then we come back, but that's going to equate to less FTEs. That number is not going to be absorbed by just replacing people with, I think I'm saying it, but I don't know that we can absorb $472,000 by someone retiring and bringing in a lesser step teacher. I think those are going to be the difficult decisions that it's going to come down to. How many full-time employees are we able to sustain in the district, right? And I don't know that that's, we can get back to that, but that's $500,000.
Yeah,
And
exactly right. That is a big number. And you'll see when we talk about specifically positions. I asked Stephanie to put a K teacher into this budget because the numbers out at Hope look like if they held, we would have to add a K classroom out there. Now, those numbers have not historically held at Hope. They've historically dropped, and we have not looked at, do we have room in the other elementary schools? So it's early. It's very early in the process. We haven't even started K registration, but right now, if everything were to stay exactly the same, we would need to add a K teacher. So I'm going to budget for it because I can't do almost $500,000 in salaries and then an additional teacher on top of it. There's no way we would make up for that. At this point in time, we also don't have any teacher retirement letters. We think we're going to get one, but I don't have it. So I don't count on those things until I have the letter.
So I think that we're going to have to wait to go back to that line to, I mean, it's,
we also had several requests for new FTEs from the building administrator, so we're gonna have to cover those and see, what you guys would like to do.
I just realized, John, did you want to get up and say something before this so that you can head out? I jumped right into this and I'm sorry.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. The superintendent asked me to speak briefly for the benefit of the school committee, but also for the benefit of the public, so that everybody understands what their legal responsibilities are. And under Rhode Island General Law 16-2-9, those are the duties of the school committee. And the 3 most important duties of the school committee are, number 1, pick a superintendent. Number 2, set policies. And number 3, set a budget. A budget is a set of priorities that the committee decides are reflective of what the community, the students, the families need. And at the end of the day, the school committee fixes the budget. The superintendent then has to live within the budget that you set. If you set a budget line item for pencils for $1, the superintendent is then authorized to buy $1 worth of pencils. If you set a budget that includes money for a new kindergarten teacher, the superintendent is authorized to hire a kindergarten teacher. On the other hand, if you turn out to need a new science teacher and you haven't budgeted for it, the superintendent has to come back to the school committee and say, I need a science teacher, and here is my proposal as to how I am going to come up with the money to do it. You folks are the guardrails, and the way that you set those guardrails is through the budget.
John, can If you just speak, because I know you can do it right off the cuff, just very briefly for those listening. There's certain laws that pertain to school budgets,
Yes,
and tax levies. Could you just give us a brief synopsis
Sure.
of that so everyone understands that what we have to operate under?
sure. The General Assembly has adopted a statute. It's called the Piva Weed Act, named after the senator who sponsored it about 15 years ago. And that limits the levy that the town can go to the taxpayers with to 4% per year. Meaning that the entire town budget, not just the school budget, but also the town's budget. And if the town has a shortfall and the town has to make up that shortfall, it's got to be part of the 4%. You can only go over the 4% with permission of the Auditor General. I know of only one instance standing here where that has happened. It happened in a regional district where the way that they allocate between the towns, two of the towns were well under, one had a population increase. So they went over and they had to ask the Auditor General in order to do that. And he did grant that in that one circumstance. I'm not aware of any other circumstances. I will also say that in my travels around the state, I too have heard the complaint that the superintendent raised, that superintendents have, that these numbers gyrate. 700,000 up this year. I think it was Smithfield a couple of years ago, $1 million in loss in 1 year. And for towns like Smithfield and Situate and Hopkinton, that's impossible to absorb. So I think that you're getting very good counsel from the superintendent and from your finance director, that I'll believe it when I see the governor sign it. Because while it's really nice that you on paper are going to get this extra money, there are districts that are right now fighting tooth and nail to say, you can't cut us. We can't operate with $1 million cut. So maybe it would be better that if Situate only got $200,000 extra and we didn't lose our $1 million. That is what goes on at the State House, and that is going on right now. So the idea that you are budgeting conservatively is very important. Don't count your chickens until they hatch.
Thank you, John.
Thank you.
Sorry for the interruption.
So the salary number that you're looking at does have the math coach in it and the human resource individual that was requested. Now we have several other FTEs that were requested, and I don't know how you guys want to do this. If you want to talk about whether they'd be in, or if that's a conversation for later.
Do you want to go, I mean, just a suggestion, however
Yep.
you feel. Do you want to kind of go like broad strokes over it first?
Yep, and then we
kinda
can
get
dive in.
back to
Yep.
where,
Okay.
and obviously
Yeah.
that's the biggest number. So we're
Right.
gonna spend some time here,
Mhm.
right?
So I did propose a 10,000 cut for the sick leave bonus line, since that cost trended down in FY 24 at 28,000. Even though if you look at the year before, because we had double payments in 1 year, it looks higher. So I did propose a cut there. There was also the question, and again, I don't know if you want to revisit it later, of are we going to do the 3% raise for the middle school athletic coaches?
Oh, did you jump?
Still on salaries, because but this proposal does not have that in it, so I just wanted to make you aware. So that would also increase. I also proposed a cut to the overtime line, and really because that's mostly in our control, and there's been some changes to help with that as well. So those are my comments on salaries. If you want me to just keep kind of going through and just give a general consensus.
Hold on one sec.
Any questions on that page before we go to the next
I
one?
do have a question. On curricular work. Why was it budgeted 0 in 2025 and then we spent $8,350? Am I reading that correctly?
So Yukawa also, I believe some of it was put in different workbooks.
So it's, Okay.
I think the other piece too that we need to be cognizant of this budget, and I'm sure you're well aware of, but I think it's important to bring out is that all the ESSER funds are gone.
Correct.
So there was a lot, and I
Yes.
think this is why a lot of districts are in a lot of, but being very cognizant that millions of dollars have left our budgets that when we did not put them in as operating, but we were able to shift some things, and I'm
Right.
not sure if that was it, but that's huge too,
Yep.
right?
So you told me that this money is somewhere else embedded in the budget?
Yep, and I do talk about the curricular cuts that she made, because they all went through and made some cuts that I put in here, but that was not one of the areas.
Okay.
So, if we need to replenish that, we can, but that was not one of the areas that she cut or I cut, so.
My next question is the extra 50,000, we'll call it, for the other additional compensation buyback. Is that the health?
So that's the health, but it's also other time. So instead of overtime, there's other time if you're under 40 hours and you work extra. So that's both of those things combined in one UCOA. And so the buyback amount was based right from our numbers of who takes buyback. So any additional money from there was the other time that people accrue.
And here's a perfect example. A paraprofessional has to stay because the bus is late or whatever. That's other time because they don't work 40 hours.
And I did base that number off prior years and looking at
That's
trends.
based on a contractual obligation that's in their like, we have to pay that.
We have to
even though-
pay
yeah.
them. They are
Legally.
yes, yes.
And then the summer pay, that's an example of ESSER funds.
Mhm.
So that 43,000 is what we're now covering, which was covered by ESSER in the past.
Yes. Yep, and I do have a breakdown of the elementary's 27,475, middle school is 5,200, and the high school was around 7,000 for their needs.
Okay.
So I highlighted in the benefits because I think it's important for everyone to understand that if we touch the salaries, the benefits get touched. So not big changes as far as the certified retirement and non-certified retirement. Certified went from 15.54% to 15.10%. Non-cert went from 12.97% to 12.99%. But again, we got to remember when people get salary increases and step changes and their whole salary itself changes, that number is coming off that number. So we have increases here. So I just thought it was important to say. I also want to mention that I took that 3% attrition rate off those numbers, assuming we meet that attrition rate in the salaries.
That's a dangerous game.
And we did do that last year. And again, Lori did a great job and that happened, but
I
that's,
sweat every year and when they give me,
but it's,
first it was Carolyn and now it's Stephanie. When she gives me that number, I sweat every year because that's a big number.
Mm-hmm. Are you done with that page? Because I have a question.
yes.
Under health and medical premiums, 500,000. I know you mentioned that that's in there because you're anticipating anywhere between a 7 and 10% increase.
Mhm.
I'm looking at the increase between 2025 and 2026. Is that a 28% increase?
You're looking at the increase from 2025 to 2020. Oh, the budgeted.
Correct.
I don't know. I'd have to do it. I can.
I was just wondering, like, why such a big increase? Like, is that
So-
what they do to us sometimes?
This is an 8% increase that I have in there.
I know, but I thought your 8% was between the projected what we paid and what you're proposing, not the budgeted 26.
So the 8% increase is based on who we have currently on health in our bill. So I got that directly from what we actually pay, not on what we budgeted prior or what was projected. It's based off of like the actual numbers,
Cost.
the bill itself.
You're solid, right?
That's a.
Unless
solid
we
number.
want to go with a different percent.
And
That's up to you guys.
No, but I think we're gonna yield to you if you're
Yeah.
dealing with so the apples to apples, we're looking at expending 2,090,000, that's the number right there, right?
Yeah.
2,093,000, and you're projecting that increase to go to 2.284.
8-4. Yeah.
So that's reasonable,
And-
right? Like that's, and again, I would love to say, but if that's the projections that they're giving you, I think we'd be foolish to look
And
at
that's at
anything.
8%.
Yeah.
And I did add in case the two salaried people that were suggested or proposed took health, that's in there as well, just so you know.
So as you know, with the
Go ahead.
with the dental, there's some money in the reserve there. And I know you were thinking of talking to the representatives to see if maybe some of that, because we don't have much reserve in our health and medical premiums, but we do in our dental. And I don't know if that can be fluid money going, maybe helping up so that we wouldn't have such a big swing, let's say in our medical, but you're thinking.
I think
having-
that's dangerous though, because then you're looking at that would be a one-time expenditure and we're just placating it. So then it's going to be a bigger ask if we wouldn't be able to do that every year.
It's, we're not spending it. It is in reserve.
But it would be a one-time withdrawal. I don't think we have so much money that we'd be taking, unless it's something that you're able to sustain year after year. I think it would be dangerous to.
We wouldn't necessarily be able to do it year over year. And when I was thinking about it, I feel more comfortable just personally. And the way that I think that it would be more helpful is to like move from dental to health, not necessarily take it out. If that makes sense. So I
Yeah,
think
we're not
that's
spending it.
definitely needs
Unless-
more conversation.
Yeah,
for sure.
we have been talking with the healthcare provider, Stephanie and I, and there is the potential to take some of the dental reserve and slide it over to the health, the medical premium to bring that down a little from the 2.28.
But you would have to continue to do that on an annual basis then, because
We cannot continue.
Then I don't-
to do
That would be-
It's a-
yeah.
It's a
It's a
one-time.
potential for, yes.
but then you're creating a shortfall for the following year. You're gonna be looking at that much more of a percentage, because these are annual costs that are gonna be recurring.
Potentially, that's correct.
The only way I would suggest if you could do that is that, if we're putting too much in every year, put in less and contribute it there, but to move a one time, you're creating a hole that you're not able to replenish. So then the following year, you need this whole plus. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
I just think it's a dangerous practice.
And we do have a meeting next week with her, so I can follow up with, and when I say her, but our, Sarah from WB, she's the one who does the consortium, just because we wanted to get all the information we possibly could.
You
so
follow
we
what
can
I'm
share
saying
it.
though, right? Like,
Yeah. So we will talk to her about all of that.
I know historically when we've talked about using some of the reserves accounts, it's for one-time expenditures, period.
We have in the past.
I'm very concerned about moving. I think we really need to think hard about that.
Mhm.
Just my
Yeah.
thought.
And, okay, ready? All right, moving on. So supplies. So I'm gonna read through just as we go through what the building administrators kind of they went in and they looked at their budgets again and they made more cuts. So I just want to talk about those for a minute before I get into the specifics of some of the small changes I made. Just because as we go through supplies, purchases, like they're all in there, it's kind of intermingled. So one of the things that we talked about briefly was from the middle school. One of the asks for the middle school no longer is needed. Dana said that there are 100 fifth graders, according to elementary principals. Approximately 4 students so far have indicated they will be attending private school next year. This will put us under the cap, so it appears at this time Situate Middle School will not need an additional section added as originally noted in our budget. So that's that one person that we don't really have to talk about. But I just think it's a good example of
Yeah.
her going back and looking and
Yeah.
She also cut her portion of the MLL teacher, as at this time she doesn't have any MLL students. So that was 14,000. She made cuts to her catering line, maintenance repair, tech hardware line, furniture line, textbook reading literacy line, equipment lines. Just want to get you a total. So our operational budget cuts were around 80,000. And grand total with the salaries was around 145,000. So these building administrators are really doing some hard work
And that
to
was. All of those are specific to the middle school?
middle
Okay,
school.
yeah, no, I appreciate that.
And at Hope, she removed her portion of the ELL teacher as well. She also made cuts to her maintenance, repair, tech hardware line, supplies and equipment line, subscription and periodicals line. That's totaling $84,042. I just didn't want this work to go missed, and that since we're going through these to see where they were touched. Clayville made cuts to maintenance, repair, tech hardware lines, pupil use tech hardware lines, web-based ELA lines, supplies and equipment lines. Hers totaled at 94,620. She also made cuts to her behavioral consultant line because she found a UCOA issue that was there prior before her. So, good job. North Situate made adjustments to her pupil use tech hardware line. Sorry, I know this is boring, but it's important.
Putting it down.
Supplies, furniture, and equipment lines. She made total cuts of $70,800. High school cuts were made totaling $60,118 in sports supplies, athletic equipment, catering, furniture, CTE lines, not taking those away, but potentially using the funds from the grants in a different way. So again, thoughtful ideas in curriculum. So I wanted to circle back to that, the curriculum cuts that were made at approximately 15,461. Just remember, she had a much smaller budget, so it doesn't sound like.
And I just would like to say to the committee, as you do this work, I'm gonna go back and dig a little deeper into the curriculum lines. This district has made a concerted effort and investment around curriculum, not only in materials, but professional development for our teachers and the position of a curriculum director. And so I want to ensure, you know, if we have to cut somewhere else, I'll come back and make additional recommendations to you, but I want to hold firm around that curriculum money and funding because that work is not over and it needs to be appropriately funded. So Steph and I are going to dig a little deeper when Ozzy's feeling a little bit better, and make sure that all the things that need to be funded around curriculum work will be maintained.
And Ozzy's number was so much lower because a lot of the curriculum expenditures are vested into the school. Yeah. Okay.
Yep. No, all good things. And then I want to talk a little bit about, because again, it's all intermingled, and then we can continue on, and if you guys have questions.
Are you still in supplies? Or
Yep.
did you switch a page?
It's all kind of intermingled.
Okay,
That's
I
why-
wasn't sure if you switched the page.
Some of the cuts that I proposed, because in the property service line, I took 7K from non-tech maintenance and repair, since there was an extra cost in a specific year for a specific issue that isn't going to be ongoing. So I tried to find things like that were easy to remove. I made a proposed change to building and maintenance equipment and vehicles. There's 50,000 in there for a new truck. I am proposing maybe that's a capital expense or another way to do that. I know it's needed.
Did you remove that already?
I removed that out, yep.
Yeah.
So anything I'm mentioning has been removed out. That's why I wanted to just cover it.
We definitely have a need for a vehicle for that department. But we will talk to the committee about other ways to fund that potentially and pull that money out of the this particular budget.
I made a proposed cut to the equipment line of 20K. That would be 4K per school. I made a proposed cut to the transportation line after comparing regular ridership with athletic ridership due to the field being closed prior. So I went year over year over year. And that was $153,980, my proposed cut. I also proposed to cut the general supplies line at 6K a school, totaling 30K. Sorry.
I just want to go back to transportation a little bit. There are conversations and some potential changes in legislation around private school transportation requirements for districts, which may change our zone, which may impact, these potential, transportation costs. The ride is, getting a lot of feedback around the exorbitant costs around transportation. And so we anticipate that we may see some relief in that area if they modify the legislation and modify the zones like they are talking about doing.
Just
That's
a clarification, I think I understand it, but the legislation is stating that districts do not have to provide transportation to all private schools.
the current legislation, there are zones.
Yes.
And we have to provide transportation within that zone. But one of the towns in our zone is Tiverton. So, it doesn't make a lot of sense, the way these zones were
Yeah.
constructed. So, they are hearing a lot of testimony, but it sounds like they're getting sufficient pressure to really look at it logically and make some changes.
Stephanie, you did not incorporate any of those savings at this point, though, because we're not sure of those, but yeah, okay.
Yeah, that we did not. It won't affect this year's budget, but hopefully the following year, we will see some relief around those transportation numbers.
I also made a proposed cut to the tech software line of 20K, which would be $3,333 per school. And that was after looking at previous years and also talking to the tech director. So now we can just go, I just wanted to highlight some of the cuts. Sure. So looking at supplies again, anywhere that has yellow or red has been touched. Do you have any questions or thoughts on those lines? Feedback for me.
The one that says textbooks and workbooks. Looks like that line is doubled. I was just curious. Is that a new
So,
curriculum?
I would have to go into the notes to see what specifically, but I know middle school cut theirs by a small amount, and so did Clayville after revisiting it. But I'm assuming it would be curricular.
We can get you specific items under that line.
I'll circle that.
We'll get that for you.
So all the building administrators did write notes too under their what they inputted into Tyler. So you can get a general census of what specifically they're looking for on those lines or the department heads.
Right.
I'll start with the toughest questions, I guess, and
Are you, I was just wondering what page you're on.
I'm just gonna talk about salaries. I think that's,
Oh,
if you
let me
want to,
just,
go.
yeah, I have just a few more questions. I want to point out that I learned the bus monitors is on here, and it was like all these zeros, and I had asked, why is this on here all of a sudden? Because they are now a part of our, like, we're now paying them that, right? There was never a line item before, but now it is. And now it's like 125,000, but that's why it wasn't on there before, but now it is, because bus monitors is something that we've taken over. Is that correct?
They've always been our employees.
Then why were they budgeted zero? Now I thought, how was that explained to me?
Weren't they partially our employees last year, but they were in the salary line and then they were pulled out.
I'm
to the
sure
fall.
they were probably in the salary line, but they've always been
Yeah.
our
But it
employees.
got moved over. I was just wondering why it was all these zeros and now it's one.
They were probably
25.
just included.
They did
in the
minus that
regular
number out of the salary line, if that makes sense. So
Yep.
it's not double, I'm not double dipping.
You talked about the curriculum. Again, under purchases and professional services. I was wondering why in 2025 it was a zero. This is probably another Ucola answer. It was budgeted zero and then it went to other services,
Oh,
purchases and professional services on the way down. It's 35406.
3.
And then it's projected to spend 50,000. I'm just curious why budgeted zero, spending 50,000, projected to budget next year for 34,000.
What page? is she on? Sorry.
Other services, 53406.
Rent, purchase and professional services.
Yep. 40,021,
Should be there.
49, yeah. This line.
You can get back to me.
Other services. And then 25. Oh. The other services. I can tell you specifically what's in it at another time when I'll look
Sure.
at it.
Thank you.
But the other services line is a line that, I believe when we did that budget, we were trying to move away from. Because a lot of things go into it instead of it being, without people kind of saying,
What
I mean,
is
it's
it?
other services, yeah, so,
Yeah, what does that mean?
and then, RIDE kind of came out with some specifics surrounding what should go in there. So now we kind of know what should be in there. So I based it off of what specifically comes out of it in Tyler, and I can get back to you about what those items were, but I believe they were contractual because I went by the actual bills.
Okay. I was just wondering like why it was zero, then all of a sudden it's big, probably.
I think we tried to say like these things
Somewhere.
belong in its proper place.
That's what I figured.
And that, I guess that is the proper place for certain items, according to RIDE.
In the, under other purchase services, transportation contractors, that's a big number, 316. Can you walk me through what transportation contractors are? That's different than busing?
So that is busing, but it's statewide also, athletic,
Oh, that's-
and for student. So it's all 3.
So it could be transportation for kids that are placed by DCYF. It could be students that are in group homes. It could be any statewide transportation service and or athletic transportation. So
So some of this could be unforeseen if we have a student that moves into town that needs to go to another school,
or the,
DCYF or what?
or the parents live here and the child is placed in Newport by DCYF. We have to transport that child legally back here every day from Newport.
Or pick them up from where they've been placed to go to school here, then take them home.
Yeah.
That's something that we can't always predict. It just, okay. The same with, tuition to, educational services agencies.
Yep, that was directly based on our current bills and then speaking to our consortium to see any new students we'd have that we know of. And again, uncontrollable, but what we know of so far for DCYF Bradley, West Bay Collaborative, Cornerstone, Tavares, and I went directly from those numbers and a projection of one student that they think may add on there.
Okay. Again, out of our control, but very costly. And Colleen, I'll let you go and then I'll let you know what I'm thinking.
Sure. I think I just wanted to kind of get to probably one of the more difficult topics, and it's salaries, FTEs moving forward. So I know, Lori, I'm looking at the data that you shared with us of what our current enrollment is. I know you alluded to the fact that we may have to add a kindergarten class, and that is included. Do you foresee any, I know, if we're looking at the numbers as they are now and everyone moving forward, if those numbers were to remain about the same, we be looking at reducing any of the grades at, say, Hope moving forward? Right now we have, and I want to be a parent about this. I think a lot of the parents were saying this is what we didn't know about last year. I think it's important that we talk about this from the beginning. It's not a pleasant conversation to have, but I think this is the place to start it. Looking at it now, we have Hope has 19 in K, 21 in 1. And then the second grade obviously is bigger, but if those numbers were to move forward, those numbers are smaller than what we have at Clayville, which we have one of each grade continuously. So I just think it's important to put out there that are we basing our budget with those numbers moving forward?
Yeah.
Unless something changes, obviously.
We are basing our budget on those numbers moving forward. We have not proposed cutting a grade 2 at Hope, but we can certainly do that based on the numbers that you have in front of you. And the enrollment, you could do that.
I just think it's something to, and no one's popular up here saying I'm looking to cut a teacher, but I think we have to be realistic. If it was justified this year, that again, if these numbers were to move forward, we'd be talking of a class of 10 and 9.
Correct.
That's not sustainable. And at what point does it have to? These are the difficult conversations I think we should bring up in the front so people are aware that this is on the realm. Nobody wants to do these things, and I don't know that these numbers are fluid, right? But we
Yeah,
can't
we watch them every month.
we
like-
can't just run classes because that's what we've always done. Because if that was the case, we'd be running classes of, 12 and 11 at Clayville, and that's just not sustainable, right? So, I think those are, when we're talking about adding, are there any other, it's easy to look at these numbers because it's very easy to equate classrooms with schools.
When we're done, I'll definitely take.
High
a look.
school and middle school, not so much,
That's right.
just because, it's kind of, you know what I mean? Like like we know in elementary, it's X kids per class. The numbers in the school, the high school and middle school kind of look like they're leveling.
Yeah, the middle school is flat
Yep.
and level. Again, we thought based on the
Five a
five
little-
going to
yeah.
6, we thought we had a little bit of a bubble
Yeah.
and we were gonna be just over the contractual limit and we were gonna have to add there. But in digging deeper, that's not the case. So we're okay at the middle school. The high school works a little bit differently because once kids choose classes and we know what the student interest is, we run courses based on the number of kids. So if we don't have the enrollment, we don't run that course. So that is a much more fluid situation. Next month, you will get the non-renewals for fiscal reasons. And that's why we non-renew a teacher from each content area. So if the numbers don't pan out,
Mhm.
you don't end up with staff that don't have any kids to teach,
Gotcha.
right? So you'll get that next month. We'll continue to watch all the numbers. Ozzy did meet with all of the elementary principals to work on those building schedules for next year. I'd like to say kudos to the elementary principals and to Ozzy in the task given was to take those building schedules and make them equitable across all 3 buildings.
Perfect.
So that a child takes PE at Clayville, they get the same number of PE minutes at Hope and at North Situate. They've been able to do that. And in doing that, we will be able to eliminate 1 art teacher and 1,
We just talked about
librarian.
this. Thank you.
I almost couldn't remember what it was. It's an art teacher and a librarian. So those have been removed from this budget.
Okay.
Um,
These are good things to hear.
We
This
have
is what we're-
already
yeah.
done that work
So-
based on the new schedule.
So, and I think that's a very important point, is that we need to build a budget not based on, and this is gonna sound cold, and I don't mean it this way, not on the amount of individuals that we already have employed. So obviously, there were people that were getting, okay, we're gonna give you more hours to fill this position, but we don't necessarily, we have to build a need-based budget.
I want to be clear.
Yeah.
We did not create schedules just to fill people's up, but what was happening is we were sharing positions between buildings. You have to allow for travel time and, things get chopped up and you end up utilizing more of a FTE that is not directly connected to instructional time with kids. So in looking at those three building schedules, we have been able to assign people full days in buildings, no travel, which cuts down on the time that they're not with kids, right? So it'll be very efficient, it'll be equitable, and nothing's ever perfect, so we'll watch
Sure.
it next year. I do know there were some questions and Ozzy met with the union today to iron those out. I did not get a chance to talk to her before she left not feeling well, but one of the first things I need to do tomorrow is make sure that nothing happened that I'm not aware of, right? So,
Sure.
because right now, we have built this budget around those reductions. Included them, not built it around, but included them. If I have to build those back in, every teacher, I just automatically use the figure of 100,000, because by the time you add in
Yep.
benefits and retirement and all that, that's
I'm-
about what
I'm
it
not-
is.
So the one thing I'm concerned about is what I see here, and Stephanie, correct me if I'm wrong. This is a spending increase of 6.8%.
I'm sorry, where are you?
The spending increase between last year's budget and this proposed budget,
The whole operational?
the whole spending increase is 6.8%. That's a lot for us. That's more than we've ever done. It's record-breaking spending increase. I think this budget needs to be cut. That's just me. I'm just one person. I'm just talking out loud. Even if we brought it down to a 6% spending increase, that's still more than we've ever spent. And by doing that, we have to cut it by $285,000.
So explain to me the difference, what you're talking about, a 6% spending increase.
6.8%, the whole spending of the entire budget.
So Stephanie's telling us that we're looking at a 3 point. That's
So
what
Erica's talking about the operational budget.
So we're looking for so explain that. So we're looking for this budget right here, we're looking for a local appropriation of an increase of 3.35 as this stands, right?
Yep.
But you're saying what our spending is
And I'd have to go back and look. I don't know off the top of my head what last year was or the year before or before I existed. So
I
I'll
wanna-
look and find out.
It just seems like an astronomical amount, and I just want to.
Yep, I can get all that
So
information and
which
share
is
it.
why I was honing in on that the $500,000 for medical, like cheapers. 500 for medical, and then we got the busing for, you just mentioned, for the transportation is also a big thing. I just at least want to point out this huge spending increase, like what's driving it? Can we do anything about it? It's big. It looks like we're spending too much money is what it looks like. And I just don't know if that's a true reflection on this budget or not. I think even just going to the town with a 335, I don't know if that's a realistic ask either, because of what you had mentioned in the beginning. I don't think we're done with this yet, but that's just my opinion. I'd love to hear from any of the school committee member.
I have something. So the increase is 10% for medical. That's out of our control, correct? So, and that's not usually that high.
Last year, I believe was 5.
Yes,
5.
That's a lot. That's a big increase.
Dental usually stays flat, thank God.
Yeah.
It-
Yeah.
It is a point of conversation. I mean, we have had the same medical provider, I think, for many, many years here at Situate. Maybe the committee wants to entertain going out to bid to see if, you know, the trust is the other general medical provider
Mhm.
that maybe we could save some
So it
money
is
if we
something we can
changed.
look.
It's not, you're not gonna be able to do any of that
Our-
with this
now
budget,
with this
but
one.
No, but
It is really high.
just to add to that, and let's
Yeah.
keep going.
Yeah.
Our,
No,
our
it's fine.
health provider, I mean, our insurance is contractually obligated. I know, sir, I can't remember the
Yes.
verbiage, so it would not be
Yes.
something we could decide. It would be a point of negotiation. If,
well,
Right.
as long as we get the same insurance, we
Gotcha.
can
Okay,
change.
gotcha.
Yeah.
I do have an answer to the other services question. I dug while everybody
Yeah.
was talking. So it's UCOA says it's for consultants. What that means is, for example, our engineer, when he does a schematic design, say we needed help with ADP, which we don't have anymore, or Tyler with a new service and we have a consultant, those type of services go into that
How
line.
about our ELL teacher with that?
That's tutoring, I believe it goes under, and
It goes on to two.
UCOA, right? Yeah,
Oh, God sakes, you cola.
yeah, there's a lot of but just to answer your question.
Sorry.
So, and the reason why I lowered it was because we are on the tail end of our final Tyler spearhead. So hopefully we will have less need for that type of help outside of, we're gonna obviously have to pay for the schematic designs from the engineer for capital projects, just to be clear.
Lori, did you have another question?
No, just the 7-10%. I know it's nothing we can control, and I was just curious on what it was last year. And I mean, now if it goes down next year, I mean, that's better, but I'm looking at this year's budget, so.
It's
And
unpredictable, yep.
it's, yeah, unpredictable, so.
So, and a lot of these expenses are contractually obligated, right? So this is, we pay X% of this, our transportation, I can guarantee that we're not transporting anybody anywhere that we're not obligated to do so. It's not out of the goodness of my heart that we're sending someone to Tiverton, right? It's because it's mandated to do so. So as far as adding FTEs, you did speak briefly, and I think it's on the agenda for later on. An HR position. I know we had talked about that.
Mhm.
Are you, what was, I don't need a number. And I know it's kind of early in the discussion, but are you, I mean, was it a 0.5? Was it a 0.25? Was it
Whatever
a?
$50,000 will get us.
Okay, so,
How's that?
so we're not looking, because I think, would I love for us to have a full-time HR person? We can't absorb it, but do we need something? So we looking at that dollar amount to try and
That's
figure
what
out.
we put in.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you. I guess it was a very direct answer. And you mentioned, a math coach. So where is that position, and is that a full-time, and is that something that?
So that would be at Hope, and that was based off of the current person. I put their step in to use as a reference.
Okay.
So that money is in there in the salary line.
They are currently being paid by a grant,
Yeah.
coming out of RIDE. Now, if that grant gets, rolled over, if they offer it again, certainly we will
I think I asked, and
apply for it. They're telling us they're not going to.
yeah.
But you know, who knows?
But
There are
that's
a
where the
lot,
greatest need is. That's what, to sustain that position there for the good of the entire school.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
I would advocate strongly for retaining that position.
Is there a way to show how much of this 6.8% increase in spending over last year, how much of it is things like busing and health insurance,
Well, we know
percentage wise?
that a big percentage of it is in salaries, just for the contractual increases. So can Steph and I spend some time going through that and get all that breakdown for you? So you know exactly where it is?
Because I can only imagine the taxpayers are gonna go, whoa, like, what's with this spending increase? So it needs to be apparent, so they can see.
I will
where
definitely
it's
take a
going.
look and see what the increase was last year, the year before, so we have all that information too, and then I'll go, if it's okay with you guys, by how I have it separated on here. by object code, you know, and then show you what piece has the most expense. I'll make you a beautiful little pie graph.
Spending increase last year was 2.6. But I know that one of the years before that, although it gets a little wonky with that 15-month,
And let's
Budget.
not forget, we had a lot
ESSA.
of ESSA money last
Exactly.
year.
Yeah.
so that's
So,
also something I
It
want
might
to,
have been 2.6 locally, but
right.
Okay.
I think it's a story that needs to be told.
and we made sure that when we spent that ESSA money, that we did not spend it in a way that would create
Correct.
a cliff for us.
In here, I only saw one place that ESSER was now being replaced, and that's summer.
Yes. And some of that is a little deceiving because like the high school, middle school always ran summer school because it's credit recovery for these kids, right? The only programs that were added were the couple of weeks that we've run summer programs at the elementary schools. So what was originally in your local budget when the ESSA money came, we took out and put into ESSA. Now that ESSA is gone, we gotta put it back in the.
And we were aware.
We knew that was gonna happen. It's not really like we were, it was new programming that we were just sliding into local. It was a shift of money, from non-ESSA years to ESSA years, if that makes any sense.
And I don't know, do we need to put on the table, and it doesn't need to be today, but do what? So I want to say the elementary piece of the summer programs is the most costly. And obviously we're going to run the high school ones, credit recovery. I loved it when we had the funds to do it, but is it something, I mean, when we're talking difficult decisions, and I'm going to yield to you and to with the, and Ozzy to.
So
Right,
we can, at the committee's direction, we can come back, and give you, you're talking about the second grade teacher at Hope. I can give you a figure for that. We can give you a figure for, elementary summer school.
That's, yeah.
Is there anything else you'd like, us to look at, dig into and bring back figures?
No, but it may just be a skimming of everything else. But I haven't heard anyone else say that they want this budget cut other than me. But I do think it's still too fit. And too
So what
fat
is-
is what I'm gonna say.
We're at 3.35%. What are you proposing, Erica? Last year, we were at 3.14.
It's, I'm not looking at the percentage so much as the dollar amount.
Well, we've never done it that way, so I need you to give me a percentage.
So every percentage, I did the math. Every quarter of a percent is 72,000. If we dropped it by 75,000, we'd get it 3%. Is that right?
Does that put us below our base?
Right, so we were at
You mean
3.14
maintenance of effort?
Yeah.
last year.
What's that?
We were at 3.14%.
But what was our maintenance of effort was how much money?
But this is my concern. If we come in at the same dollar figure as last year with contractual increases,
I'm not,
healthcare.
yeah, I agree with
increases,
you. I'm not saying we
Okay,
should only,
so
I'm not
I'm
saying
not
we should
following
ask
you.
the same amount. So last year, we're asking for an increase of 747,828. Is that right?
What we're asking for with this proposal.
700,000.
Right, so with this proposal, that's up on the screen, $747,828 over the local appropriation from last year is what is currently being asked for.
So I think,
So if you were to drop 75,000 from that, we would still be above the appropriation of what we got last year, correct?
I can do it quick.
We have a balancing act, I think. I think we as education, our job is the school, right? We're to advocate for as best we can for the district. Obviously, we're part of a bigger system, which is a town, and we need to be cognizant of what those, but I think and I don't know. My thought is, I do know we got to ask a lot of questions. I know public comment is down later, but I'm wondering, Erica, if you want to open to public before we come up with.
I just want to make,
here.
and I want to make sure that the school committee is also
Yeah,
done
of
with
course,
their
of course.
conversations
That's-
and.
But I think maybe getting feedback from, before we make any set decisions. on
Yes.
where-
And we're not even voting tonight. We're just,
Mhm.
because we're having another
Right.
budget meeting.
Yep.
We're just
Yep.
having a conversation. There's no votes happening.
That would be a
72,
3.01% increase if we did what you asked.
72,000.
Yeah.
is there anyone else on the school committee that wants to mention anything, or should I, everyone good with having public comment with anyone that has it? All right, is there anyone in the public that would like to come up and speak?
Kate Globally, Lowell, 18 Pleasant Lane, Clayville. So like when you guys were talking back and forth a minute ago about hope, I just wanted to bring up like, you guys, somebody had said it on school committee about possibly redistricting our town instead of constantly every year talking about hope where we have 10 in one class, 9 in another, where we all know that the morale at Hope is really, really low. So if you're a teacher at Hope, to constantly have the stress every year, am I going to be on the chopping block, or which second grade teacher is better than the other? Like, that's a huge amount of stress. This town has not been redistricted in decades. You've got people that live across from Hope that are getting bused across town. You have Clayville, where we're at capacity. No offense, because the school department needs a place to be, but that's something else that the town needs to discuss. We can't have Clayville at capacity where our kids are
No,
in the mid-20s where Hope isn't. So I know I'm not saying that you guys are talking about that this year, but it was a discussion of some of you to talk about redistricting where we're not constantly firing a teacher. But also, you know, if we want to be Bright Stars high rated certified for kindergarten, we need more space in Clayville. And we are busting at the seams because, you know, the school department needs a space. But if the elementary schools were more balanced out, maybe there would be more space here and there, and you wouldn't have this constant year to year of what are we doing with the staffing at Hope. But that's one comment I had. The other comment is, I know budgeting across the state right now is so overwhelming. You know, Warwick, East Grinnet, it's a nightmare right now. We can't be concerned about things like cutting a summer school program in the elementary and then hearing from you guys that you don't like our RADCAS scores. So as a fellow educator, summer school cannot be an option. I totally agree that, you know, we got to work on things, but, you know, we're looking for a new ELA curriculum right now. Like, that's a huge part of the budgeting. But when it comes to things like, where are we going to pick apart the money? Like, you can't take away summer school because that's where these kids really need the recovery, you know?
Can I speak to that?
Yeah.
I think that's a fabulous point, and I hear every single word you're saying too, particularly about, so we did this at Clayville years ago. We had, just like that, it was like every year you'd lose one, and we were blessed that we were able to absorb these wonderful educators in our school, like who went to middle school, who went to Hope, but it's difficult. It's very, very difficult. If I had a magic wand, I'd have one massive school and a central location in all of our elementary, but again,
But
that's,
that's not.
no, it's
You know,
not.
I would like to know historically, and this can be something that somebody can research, but when was the last year our town was redistricted?
I can tell you,
Oh, good.
it involved my children.
Yeah,
So I think my youngest is 32.
the 90s,
So maybe,
you know,
maybe, 25 years ago.
but you know,
The piece about summer school, I think it's very important that you said that. I appreciate that. I want to look into who is being serviced by these summer schools, what are the results of, and I'm not advocating that's the
Yeah.
place, but they're difficult decisions, right? Like we don't
Right.
want to be cutting classroom teachers. We don't want to be cutting a math coach. We don't. So where are those places? And if
Right.
it's not summer school, then it shouldn't be. And I want to hear that. And I want to see that the kids who
Yeah.
needed it the most were the kids that were there. And this is what, I don't need the data per se, but if from your perspective, Lori, that is something that is non-negotiable, you spoke about curriculum, you want that to be non-negotiable to the best of our ability. We need to stand by that. So, and as a fellow educator, I appreciate
Yeah.
your candidness.
I personally feel that I don't have the background to tell them to where to cut the money. But I feel like I can say we do need to skim it.
Oh, yeah.
And
no,
you
I just
pick it?
wanted to put it out there. You
I
guys
understand.
were asking
Yeah,
for
no.
public comment, like
And with
just the
busing,
mention of summer school, like, you know.
mhm. And the other thing, when you
in the
talked
beginning
about
of the school year,
redistricting,
the RICAS scores were such a stress. It's like, we can't take away things like that and care and put that stress on the principals and the teachers if, you know, summer school's on the chopping block. That to me seems like a complete non-negotiable, but, you know, I just wanted to bring up the hope thing because you guys were talking about it and I know we've talked about it. So, you know, it seems like it's high overdue to redistrict our town lines.
so with redistricting, I have looked into companies who does it, who doesn't do it. I was hoping NESDEC would do it and they don't. I looked into, buying a program that you can get. I really wanted to find someone who could just come in and do it for us, but there's not a company that I could find that does that. But I did learn that we actually have a program, our busing program, that gives us more information than we thought it did, exactly, where people live. And it was a conversation of,
It'll plot it all out.
Yeah.
so- And
So-
then you can like sort of move your circles and
Right.
figure out.
And the other thing with just like the busing line, I know just from running the field trips like at Clayville, the price for busing has gone up like tripled from just last year to this year. So for instance, the kindergarten to go just to Salisbury Farm was triple the price
Oh,
this year
crazy.
as opposed to last year. So that's for everything, like a soccer game, everything. Like the busing prices have gone like triple.
which is why resolutions are being written
Right. like, we can't do
statewide
anything
to
until
stop.
statewide that, you know.
Well,
we
we're
just have to
trying to
use it,
stop
yeah.
paying for kids to go to private school, like we're busing kids
Right.
to private school.
Until the state tells us to. you know.
That is why we went with the opt-in
Yeah.
process here. Because every little, if you're gonna drive your kid anyway,
Yeah.
we're never gonna leave a kid, we're never gonna do that. But if you're a parent who drives your kid every day anyway, we can figure all that out. And if we can take one bus off the route,
Yeah.
it's a huge
No,
savings.
that's.
It's
so
the
smart,
difference
yeah.
between running summer program
Yeah, no,
or
but
not,
Right.
right?
just to kind of piggyback on her comment. So as far as redistricting, it's been before my time involved, obviously, and I'm not. Do we know of any, and those as educators or Lori, do we know of any other district that has done it recently?
I reached out to RIASC.
Just to try and see what their process was.
South Kingstown did. Warwick, like South Kingstown's closing an elementary school. But they've done it multiple times in the last, like, I'd say like 8 years.
Okay, just to see what their
Um,
process was for doing it. And again, it's not going to be for this budget, but it's a
I mean,
very.
Warwick has been redistricting constantly,
Mm.
but not to say they've done it well, but you know.
Coventry attempted to, but that didn't go well at all, so they abandoned it.
Just to see the.
So is this regarding the budget?
No, oh, we're just doing public comment on budget.
Correct, for
Okay,
right now.
sure.
But I will have a public comment soon. I just want to end it. I want to end the budget.
Richard Finnegan, Ridge Road. What's the proposed budget increase?
3.35%.
And what are we looking for?
We're not sure yet. I don't think we've come to that conclusion yet. It's a $747,828 increase over last year, correct?
That doesn't, could be a million. It's the percent, to me, it's the percentage. That's what matters. And if we can go up to 4%, the town said every department should be able to go up 4%. And why should we take it away from our children? I'd ask the school committee to really concentrate on the children in this community. Our town has a finance director, so they say. When the finance director can get a raise over $50,000 in 1 year, which gives her an increase, and the amount is $133,000 a year. And you can check the December 14th, 2023 town council meeting where she got that increase. I got a W-2.
I'd love to stay focused on our budget, if you don't mind, Mr. Finnegan, because
Yeah.
we're really trying to work on our budget at this workshop, and we still have more to go with. I hear what you're saying, but
Yeah.
I
So
would like to hear your,
I'd be more concerned about the children than somebody in town getting a huge increase than making $149,000 when it wasn't even budgeted.
thank you.
So I would really,
I'll-
where can we get these documents online? I looked,
Are they,
couldn't find them.
they were put on at the last minute due to multiple illnesses in central office. Is that what you meant? That's,
Right.
So where can we get them? No, this, yeah, this is a public meeting and we have no idea what you're talking about. We come in here blind. Everybody in here came in blind tonight because those documents are not online. If you look at the town council agenda, all the documents are attached to the agenda. I would ask the school committee to start attaching your documents to the agenda. So the public, we know what you're talking about. We have no clue.
Richard,
you're
we
talking about.
always attach all the documents. This was scheduled to be a budget workshop, not part of the school committee meeting proper. It got rolled into the proper meeting. So these were the workshop documents.
They're like my working
Yeah,
documents.
we're happy to put them in a place where the public can see them. We're not trying to hide anything.
No, I'm not
They're-
saying that. I'm
they're
just
just
looking
not-
for them and
yeah,
I couldn't
right,
find them. That's
right.
why I'm here tonight.
We'll get them up for you, but generally when we have a workshop there, we don't disperse these because we're working on them.
And I'm
right?
writing on them in
Right,
pen.
I understand, but
So this will look different in probably 48 hours,
Yeah.
but we'll get them up for you.
I appreciate
Okay.
that.
Sure.
so where do we go from here? I know we have another workshop scheduled if we need it, and it sounds like we are going to, excuse me?
Is it the end of March?
I just wanted to, just clarification, and did we have any other questions on the budget? Or was there anyone online that wanted to, I know last time we closed out, I got a call after the meeting and I know it wasn't done intentionally. Someone had reached out, they had their hand up and we didn't see them, so I'm just being overly.
Yes, we don't see.
Is that when you had to
We
use your
tried to
phone?
get someone
No, it
last
was a
time
different
and
one,
it
I
would,
think.
oh,
Yeah.
somebody else?
Yeah, but I know it wasn't, I said, I'll
Okay.
promise we'll, so yeah, I'm sorry if you want to. Oh, wow.
I want to say thank you to you for being so transparent after what happened last year. I really appreciate that sentiment. I want to double down on what.
We just need your name and
Oh, I'm
address.
so sorry, Stephanie Robinson, 673 Hope Furnace Road.
Thank you, Stephanie.
My question, I just want some clarification on the art teacher and librarian that you guys said are going. How is that gonna work if you have one at each school? Who's gonna go and how are you gonna work that?
There is a process around seniority. Sorry, I was on. Sorry. There's a process around seniority, how you how teachers get laid off and then recalled. There's a very specific process. So it really is around seniority. So least senior.
So I think my problem is I don't really understand because before we had a gym teacher, a librarian, and art teachers that were going to the 3 elementary
Right.
schools, right? We don't have that anymore, right?
Well, we won't next year.
Okay, that's what I need
next
the
year,
clarification.
yes.
Okay.
I'm sorry if I wasn't
No,
clear.
that's okay. I just wanted to make sure that
Yeah.
that we weren't just randomly losing an art teacher. and
No.
librarian. But I also wanted to double down on what my friend from Playville said about the morale at Hope. The teachers are amazing people. And just remember that when you're holding their job in your hands. My son's teacher from first grade, I'm sorry, I get really nervous when it's people. My son's teacher from first grade was the one cut last year. Luckily, they had a position for her, but I can't imagine every year coming around. I mean, next year it's going to be third grade. When does it kind of stop, I guess, is my concern.
Unfortunately, it's quite common practice in many towns. It's just
But if we did redistrict, that would be solved, correct?
not necessarily, I don't know the answer.
So can I jump up there for
Yeah.
1 second? And 1000%. I hear everything you're saying.
Yeah.
It stops when we make it through the grades. It's the exact same thing that, and I know that's not a pleasant thing to think about. It's not my experience in this district. We have always, just because, and please, I know you meant it from the bottom of your heart. You said they're wonderful people. Please thinking about that. By no means are any of our decisions, and I know you didn't mean it like this, are they ever based on the quality caliber of teacher that are in those schools?
Right.
And we have been blessed that we have always been able to absorb those teachers within the district. So, and this has happened again historically, whether it be through a middle school, whether it be through Clayville. My concern is, and these are my thoughts, and I wholeheartedly believe we need to look at redistricting. I am concerned, like it's happened in many communities, if we bring out an outside organization to come in and say, let's look at this, the first things out of their mouths are going to be, you need to close a school. And I don't think anyone here, and I'm not saying,
No.
I know that's the piece we can, and again, I think redistricting and looking at, like Lori was talking, using this, we can talk to other districts. I know South Kingston, I know what, not know them, but I know what's happened in those districts. We don't have 13 elementary schools, but I'm just, that's a concern for me, because that's just going to, that's not the outcome that any of us are looking for.
Right. And when I mean, I know it's still a business, but when we moved to Hope, I was very surprised and pleased at the low class sizes. And I do have friends that moved here to Hope, to Situate, because of those small class sizes. So you're really kind of sending people elsewhere by doing this. It just, I'm sure you're aware of it, but that's,
I know, and I promise this is it. I gotta just Colleen shut up.
and that's the last thing.
It's not, me too. I know, it's just not sustainable. Like, and again, I think Mrs. Kate had said, like, if it's fair in Hope, is it fair in Clayville? Do we, if I could have every elementary, I think everyone here, if we could have every elementary class under 15, we'd love it.
Right.
We just don't have the tax base to do it. And that's,
But we do have the option of redistricting and evening out these schools. Right? Yes.
We promise to look into it. Well, you really can't, if you speak from there, then people from home can't hear you. But we do hear about
Hi.
the need for redistricting.
Michael Smith, 241 Hope Furnace Road. I guess this has just been discussed, the whole redistricting, since last summer. And
Yes.
all we hear is you're the only person, it sounds like, Erica, that looked into it at all on the board, looked at outside things. I don't know when that happened, but now we're talking we can't do it for next year because we didn't look into it over the summer. So that's just a concern of mine that, like, we've all brought this up. No one's looked into it. I don't know if anyone in the old board did, but it's frustrating because we're sitting here talking about it repeatedly, and no one's looking into it. I guess the only question, because you're talking about budgets, I have some other stuff to talk about that later, but budget wise, kind of like Richard's saying, we have a 4% we're allowed from this town, right?
Yeah, I'm not sure. if
Well, no,
that's accurate.
I'm a little naive with this. I'm very new to the whole budget thing, but are we allowed up to a 4%
No.
ask from the town?
I don't think that's how that works.
The town's
The
allowed.
town in its entire budget.
Okay.
So
So-
that means Department of Public Works, the police
Yeah, yeah.
department, they are all
Yep.
adding to, if we're taking, they're all adding to that total
To
budget.
answer your question specifically, and please jump in if I'm not correct, we encompass a big piece of the town budget. Everyone knows that,
Yeah,
right?
we're the
75%.
biggest employer, right?
We, from a legal perspective, and I believe we as a committee would be able to ask for up to a 4% increase of our budget. From a legal
Legal
perspective,
perspective. Okay.
without us surpassing the legislative cap.
Like that John was speaking of earlier, I'm thinking.
Yes,
Okay,
yes, that's
okay.
just a.
So I guess my question is if it's potential that the town would authorize this, us asking, why wouldn't we ask for more? That's all I'm asking, because you're sitting here, we're within really very close to last year's budget, and you're sitting here trying to cut even 75,000 more. Why?
Because we have an operating spending of 6.8, and I had asked to see where that's coming from,
Mhm.
because that's record breaking, astronomical.
That's something I want to come back to too, I know. Sorry.
Yep, no, go ahead.
I just think that's something important on the next, I'm not understanding that as best as I should.
And it's a story that needs to be told, because if we're gonna go, when we go to the town, I want to make sure they know where this increase in spending is. I think the highest increase in spending that I could find
Mhm.
since I've been on the school committee was 5.1.
Got it.
But, that can be hidden in many other
Yeah.
things. It could also have to do with what state aid you got that
Of
year,
course.
as we heard,
And I
it
know with COVID, we
fluctuates.
lost a lot of money too. I get all that
It's-
stuff.
so
One thing I
it's-
know, and you guys were kind of noting it through the process of you explaining, there's a lot of factors within this budget that obviously you're contractual, you're under a contract, you
Yes,
cannot change,
correct.
right? It might be important to maybe divide the budget to show, look, we can't adjust any of these things.
Actually,
that might
Stephanie
help.
does that. She puts a
So-
nice pie chart together.
Yeah, no, I know. I'm just saying, as far as like the way we were looking at it today, it was kind of like back and forth on things. And then it would just be, all right, look, we can't even cut this stuff. This stuff is mandatory. There's a 3% increase based on this contract, whatever it is. And then
Fuel,
look, these are the
oil.
ones we could possibly cut. So then we can kind of, I think it's better that way. And then also, kind of go back to Richard, I would love to have had this paperwork beforehand. I know it's working documents, but if I could look at it, I'd come up with more questions. And that would also, I think, help the conversation, because that's what we're having right now. So I understand, David. Thank you, and welcome aboard for being a new guy here. Thanks for doing your part. But seriously, I mean, I know we have another shot, but I would have had a lot more questions. I put together a $70 million budget every year for my business. So, no, I understand, but I'm just being honest and saying that if I
Yeah.
had it before today, I may have had other questions that might help you guys even put this together better. That's what I'm trying to say.
And
We are also available to, you can come in, Steph and I will both sit down with you once you get the
Yep.
documents if you
And I-
like.
I don't need to waste taxpaying dollars on doing that. You guys have more things to do.
No, but
Other stuff.
I will always
But I
offer.
want to get back
No, thank you. I do.
just to that point too, and you're absolutely right. I think one of our concerns with, and we're trying to be as transparent as possible. That's why we're having these are initial
Appreciate it.
conversations, truly. Like, we're
Yeah.
just starting this process. This is a workshop, but I get it. It's hard to follow. It's hard to, and I
Dude,
think,
I just haven't missed a meeting since this whole hope
Yeah,
drama
nope.
over the summer. I may not have been at this meeting,
No,
but I've been
but-
on that call. And I promise I will never miss one. I told you
I-
guys that last time I spoke a public comment, which I know I didn't control my emotions, and I apologize for that. But
I was ready for
that
it.
was gonna
I
be
was
my
ready-
next thing, but you guys said, oh, we'll wait until real public comment. So I'm just trying to talk about budgets now and follow the rules.
Thank
So-
you,
I
thank you.
think the biggest hesitation, and point well taken, Mr. Finnegan too, is about putting that out there and doing it. I think, like, we have two documents that we received as school committee members. The first one, as Stephanie said, is an 11% increase. If we ever put this up somewhere and somebody saw this, do you know what I'm saying? And
But see, draft one.
I
it's
know,
fine.
I know,
mean, you
and
know what?
that's-
Unfortunately, it is what it is.
there are, and again, we move forward, not backwards.
Yeah.
When I started this process 10 years ago, the budget was presented to the entire community at one meeting,
Mhm.
and it was voted on in 2 hours. So we've moved mountains. Are we there yet? Absolutely not. And these points are well
Yeah,
taken.
No problem. Thank you.
So, hi, George.
All right, George Kozmowitz, East Hopkins Road. In response to some of the questions that Mr. Smith brought up, I've been involved in this process for a pretty long time. And some may know, others may not, that I serve on the town's budget committee. And in response to the question of why not just ask for the legally allowable 4%? Taxpayers who live in this town, a majority of them do not have children in the schools. They have different priorities than you do, and they will come to the financial town meeting with different expectations of what is acceptable and what is not acceptable, regardless of what is legally allowable. And you have to keep in mind that, yes, the needs of the children in the schools are important, and they're important to you. They're not important to everyone. And you have to balance those needs. That's what the whole process, this is the beginning of that process. And there's more to it than tonight. There's more to it than the financial town meeting. There's a lot of priorities that have to be balanced. That's all.
Thank you. So before I forget, shall we agree to meet on the 26th? I assume 7 o'clock, right, Colleen?
I think. So we've had, full transparency, we've had some discussion as a committee. And we've always historically had a 7 o'clock public start time. And unless I hear otherwise, I'm assuming that's what the taxpayers want. That's what, this may be a larger subject, but I kind of we talked about changing times a little bit. And I kind of gave pushback, especially when it was around the budget time. I think historically, maybe we have started some meetings earlier, but I think because particularly with budget time, these are my thoughts. I mean, they're open for, if this is what the general public believes is the time that we normally meet at, and in an effort to be most transparent. I don't think we were trying to meet earlier to not be transparent. That we would do a 7 o'clock start time. It's these times have been established. Probably, George, do you remember a time that they weren't ever a 7 o'clock start time?
I did bring it up at the last meeting, what people wanted, if we could move it back to 6:30, and the public didn't say anything, so. But I have no problem starting at 7. It's in the past, we have had our workshops like in the afternoon at 4:30.
A budget workshop. I would, that's asking for, where again.
I'm not arguing with you, I'm just
Okay,
saying that was
yeah.
past practice.
Yeah, but
So 7 o'clock, works for me, and we'll just have this, hopefully that'll be the only thing on the agenda. I don't know if this room is available, we'll have to find out. Can you do that, Lori?
yes.
So right now, we've asked you to look into a few things, right? To look into,
Yep, I made a list
you made a list,
of
okay, thank
the
you.
thoughts. In the spirit of wanting to have a document uploaded and ready for everyone, that, is not a scribble working document. Is there any direction that you'd like to send me in so that I can work on creating that, that we haven't covered?
Steph, can I make a recommendation? I would like you to put up this proposed 26 budget workshop
Okay.
one. And I'm not asking you to recreate a new one. Put this one up.
Okay.
This is what we're working from. It will change probably within a week or two, but when we meet on the 26th, whatever the new rendition is, we will put up so that you
Okay.
have that one.
Steph,
Is
I would
that
say
fair enough to everybody?
specifically like, draft, right?
Yep.
Just draft
Yep,
on
watermark.
every single page. It
Yep.
just says draft, so nobody
Oh,
is, yeah.
Yeah, watermark it.
Thank you, Steph. No.
Any more discussion on the workshop? Okay, moving right along, do I have a motion to accept the consent agenda?
Can I do this? I make a motion to accept the consent agenda to include the minutes of the regular session for February 4th, 2025 and February 13th, 2025. Bills from the general fund in the amount of $576,508.85. Grant fund bills in the amount of $31,991.30. Northwest Special Education bills in the amount of $461.79. And school food service funds in the amount of $44,894.22.
Second.
Any discussion?
Richard Finnegan, Ridge Road.
Get a vote.
Discussion?
Oh.
When you
we
said
did-
discussion, I was waiting for it. Hang on.
I thought we'd have a discussion before we voted in case Mr. Finnegan had an issue with the consent agenda.
Are you going to public comments?
No.
No.
I apologize.
The Yes.
I-
consent agenda. The February, I believe, the 13th meeting.
Yes.
What's the minutes? What do the minutes say?
Are you saying the minutes are not on the Secretary of State?
No, they're not.
Unfortunately, our recording secretary is homesick, so she's not here to respond to that.
So in light of that, I'd like to amend the consent agenda. I don't know that we should be voting on something that's not.
Give me a minute. My old fashioned thing. That was when we had an executive session,
So you're,
correct?
Correct. Correct.
And there's no minutes up there from our executive session.
No. Are they online now?
Maybe they're dated wrong on.
Oh.
Oh.
no, so
Okay, well, then,
On clerk base, but the Secretary of State, they may be,
But this is for February 13th, they're still dated February 4th. No, it was the executive session minutes.
no, I want to the executive, I just wanted the public minutes. That's all is that the public minute or no?
No, that's
No.
February 13th.
No,
Well,
okay.
the link is.
You
February
you can
13th.
approve it, but I was just wondering what,
Executive session, field of minutes. That's all it says. But the top says February 4th, so there is,
so the minutes are there, but they're incorrectly dated.
that's what it looks.
is that the public?
So there is
No.
February 4th, which is a full.
That's our regular meeting.
That's right, that's February 4th. Then February 13th, the minutes are the open session of them going into executive session.
Can I just take a look at that? I just want to see something.
It's them moving into executive session and then coming out of it.
But it's dated February 4th on the top. So it's the top date that is wrong on that document.
What's your pleasure, Mr. Finnegan? Would you like us
No,
not
no,
to?
you can vote. You can vote on it. There's just no problem. Here's my issue. I think you really need to speak to your legal counsel on what you need to put on those public minutes. I don't think it's proper, those minutes there. You were in an executive session, you talked about personnel, and you need to talk to him what needs to be put on those minutes. If you look
The
at the.
executive session minutes.
Yes, correct.
For the public?
There's certain things you need to put on those minutes, and it's not on those minutes. And it's a violation of open meetings law if it's not on there. That's all I'm saying.
Okay,
I would.
We'll check with John in
I
the
just,
morning.
you
thank,
should talk to your legal counsel. Thank you.
all in favor?
aye.
Aye. Now. For public comment, I like to read my little blurb, which is the purpose of the purpose of public comment period is for the committee to receive input from its community. The public is an important function and is critical for us to listen to the community and to consider what we hear when making our decisions. In general, it is not a time to receive direct responses from the school committee. However, we may provide brief factual clarification if necessary. Otherwise, the public comment section is for you to voice your concerns without engaging in debate with school committee members. It is important for you to know that you may not be getting your answers to your questions or concerns during public comment period, but that does not mean you not be given your answers. There are other opportunities for you to get your answers. For example, you can call or email any school committee member. You can reach out to your school parent PACT representative. This process is designed to allow consistency and fairness and to allow everyone a chance to be heard without unduly disruption to the meeting flow and allow the school committee to complete its business in a timely fashion. As a result, in order to allow everyone an opportunity to speak and an opportunity for us to hear your concerns and comments, I'll allow each person to come to the mic once during public comment. If you find that you have additional comments after your turn is over, then please address them at a later time by reaching out to a school committee member or the superintendent. Having said that, we appreciate you coming to this meeting, and we thank you in advance for expressing your thoughts with us.
Hi, Mike. Oh, Mike, I can't hear. Is it on? Yeah. Okay. Michael Smith, 241 Hope Furnace Road. First, I actually want to say thank you to all of you. Honestly, this year, the way you read this before public comment, the public comment turned into this back and forth craziness. And I'll be honest, although I did appreciate sometimes to get some answers during people talking, the meetings lasted way too long. So I appreciate that you read that beforehand and actually kind of make this happen this way, because I think that that's really helping our meetings kind of move forward. But with that said, when public comments brought up, I know this has been brought up before. When people stand up here, they talk about different things. There's no back and forth, which is great. The banter is not needed. However, is there any way we can make it like a follow-up the following meeting that you guys put on your schedule, like an update on some of the public comment questions, something along those lines? I think this was brought up once before by somebody, but just in the sense that like there might be 5 more people behind me that come and talk about different things, bring up other points. I have a few other things to discuss as well. And it just doesn't seem like it gets followed up on, at least at the meetings. So it could be done, you guys can be following up on things in the back end, but we don't necessarily know about them. So I'm hoping that maybe after everybody's public comments, maybe the first thing on the agenda itself could be things from the previous meetings, open, public comment. I don't know if that's something that's allowed or not. John's not here to ask that about either. So, but just in the general, I just feel like we bring things up, it's brought back up the following week, it's brought back up the following week, but not necessarily always followed up on. So I don't know if that's something we can possibly do. That's just one suggestion I have.
Very interesting. I try and reach out to individual people after a meeting at times, making phone calls if I can get their number.
Yeah, it's
But that's, to your point, that ends up being a one-on-one and then other people.
Yeah, and I think that from at least when I started coming to these meetings over the summer, transparency was the big thing that everybody keeps talking about. So that's wonderful. Like I said, I think you guys probably do follow up, going back to like the one-on-one, like you just said, but in the sense that I'd like to know maybe that answer too. So I don't know if that's something we could possibly look into.
I think there's I think it's a great thing for. I'm processing as you're saying.
Yeah.
I don't know if there's an OMA violation, is we set the agenda, but there's something to it. Absolutely.
It's just a suggestion for, I mean, again,
Yeah.
it's just, I'm not looking for a back and forth because we don't do that
Mm.
during these now, which is great. It's in the sense that maybe a follow-up next week would be great on anything that was discussed today. I have a question regarding, is Jason still on leave? I think I possibly saw him leaving. Can I get an answer on that or no?
Yes, he's back.
Is he back? Okay, just because I've been back and forth with Jason since that vestibule thing was built at Hope, and I have a lot of concerns with it. I've already talked to Mrs. Toomey. She actually directed me to Jason, so I didn't just go directly to Jason. The concern I have is that I don't think it's built properly. I don't know if you guys have seen it, but there's literally plywood in the ceiling, and I'm told that's okay. Budgets and blah, blah, blah. The thing leaks. The roof is not done right.
What I hope you're talking about?
The new entrance that they did, the vestibule, I can't say the word right, sorry. But yes, so since they put it in, I mean, I've had questions for Jason. I was back and forth with him, and I'm still waiting on 2 emails, and I was told that he was on leave, so that's why I didn't get the responses. So I figured I'd come here and ask if there was someone else I should reach out to. But my concerns are that the roof is not put on right. I don't care what anybody says. It is not put on right. It also leaks where it's meeting the building. And yeah, well, you'll see exposed plywood. It's a flat rubber roof on that roof. They put a drip edge on the side that would then have water run underneath it. So I'm just very concerned on Jason.
I've not been out there when it's
No.
been raining, so
Yeah,
thanks
well,
for
you
sharing
can
that.
see the drips on the wall. So you can see where the paint,
Yeah.
I mean, there's primer on the wall. There's no paint. The ceiling is literally like, I mean, an exterior grade plywood that has knots and holes in it. It's not like a finished ceiling, and I'm told this is done.
Let me look into that
Yeah,
for you.
no problem. I appreciate it. And it's just really because there's other problems we have. We just put a brand new thing in. I don't want it to be broken already, basically. The other question I had, and I don't know who to talk to about this, but you guys gave out a lot of money to the Boosters Club for the field and for the speaker system, all that. How do we get updates on that?
Updates on,
Like, well, you guys gave the money to the Boosters Club for them to put some kind of speaker system in for the field, as well as I think it's like an announcer booth. That was the press box, sorry.
No. No funds have been given to the boosters for speakers out on the field.
I was at the meeting when you guys authorized it. I don't know if you actually released the
We,
funds.
we
yet or
have not, we have
Oh.
not expended any of those funds, Mr.
Oh,
Mr.
okay.
Smith. Oh, I'm not supposed to be going back and forth.
No, it's okay. It's just
Something.
no, actually, we can give you information.
Remember, Scott Dumont stood up here,
Just
you
like
guys
that.
were like, yep, here's the money. I mean, not physically the money, but I'm just trying to figure out what was happening with it, that's all.
So, we continue to work with the boosters around the concession stand and the press box. There have been some issues that have arisen. We are working with the, town's, building official to make sure that, what is done correctly.
Okay.
To speak to the thing is leaking and it's, no,
Yeah,
right? So we want to make sure it's done right.
of course.
I do want to clarify though, this committee, as far as we've never given, the boosters have given the school department money
Mhm.
for purchase of and to support things. We do not support the booster club.
Okay, so I might have misspoke, but the meeting I was at, the funds came from, again, you didn't release them possibly, but it was approved, I believe, $125,000 to give for the field, and the boosters, I think, we're just kind of handling it.
We,
Is it the
Yeah.
press box?
Okay,
It wasn't.
Right.
Not first, we never expended that kind of money for a sound system.
Okay.
There was discussions with the Boosters Club about regarding doing a press box
Yeah.
on top of the concession stand that they purchased.
okay,
What the superintendent spoke to is that there are some issues with,
well, I knew there was some sinking. going
yes,
on,
so
too.
so we're working
And
with
there
the
was some
town
grade, I
and
think it possibly would have to maybe be
Ah,
back too, because
yeah,
of something with the
yeah.
warranty on the field.
all of that, we're working.
Yeah,
with
but
it.
that was, I mean, we talked about that back in the fall.
And those issues have not been resolved yet.
Wow, okay. Okay, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Matthew Allen, 159 Hope Furnace Road. Um, kind of budget, but not because it has about to do with the school. I know the numbers are still coming in, but I also know there were some parents that want to go back to Hope that had to be redistricted out. Are we also like thinking about those people and their requests? I know the superintendent has the right to say, no, you cannot go back because we're eliminating a classroom being the second grade. But if there's enough of them to take some, like, is there wiggle room and numbers is what I was looking at. I know the numbers all not are in and some are, and I don't know if anybody decided, maybe they gave up and said, you know what, I'm not going to write it. I'm just going to keep my kid at North Situate or Clayville or whatever. Will you be taking in if somebody wants to move? Like they said, Clayville's overrun. If anybody wants to come to Hope, I know we put it out last year. If anybody wants to, maybe they have changed their mind since, or if they've had their own issues. Like I said, my kid had some issues this year. It's to me take care of it, but maybe somebody else at the other schools are having the same issues because they are only one classroom and they want to stop because there's no way to move Clayville. There's only one classroom.
I believe and the superintendent can correct me, but because I've heard her say it many times, she always takes into consideration requests.
I just
Always.
know when we were at North Situate, you said you put in the request, but you may not always be able to move because there was that one family there. So I just didn't know. if there was more people coming in. Obviously, you don't have to answer. I just didn't know if
I've
anybody.
not received any additional requests.
All right. And there was something else. Did we, last meeting, I asked about the PAC minutes, or did you guys discuss?
Did, and I thought we had a solution. There is an app or a program that will record the meeting and then give you a transcription bulleted. So we were supposed to try that this meeting. The technology department has to do some things and it wasn't quite ready. I did, I hope, record it on my laptop, and we're gonna see if we can get an AI transcription of that recording. So we're trying to use technology because I
Yeah.
don't have a body to like take minutes and.
No, that's fine. I just know you guys had the curriculum meeting
Yep.
the other last week. So I just wanted to know if you guys discussed or if we were still waiting for notes coming back from.
We,
Our
I
people.
think we have a solution. We're working on that.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, squinting, and I've got glasses on. Hello.
Robinson, 673 Hook Furnace Road, like everyone else here. I live on Hook Furnace. I had a question about the ELL teacher. I had to look up, see what that means. The ELL teacher that's being cut, how many kids are affected by that?
Is it MLL or ELL?
ELL.
I thought it was
Same
M-
thing.
referred to
It's
it
the
as-
same thing.
okay.
Yeah. So that position is not being cut. We are legally required to provide services.
Okay.
But rather than hire a full-time teacher on step with benefits, we are hiring a certified, fully certified teacher that will be hired as a consultant.
Okay.
So they'll provide the number of hours that are required for the number of kids that we have in the district.
Perfect. Thank you.
Good evening, George Kozmowitz, East Hopkins Road. Couple of items. First, if I can tell you from experience, if you want to increase public participation in these meetings, bring up redistricting. You'll have lots and lots of people expressing their opinions, lots of them, loudly. I do have a question. I know this isn't supposed to be question and answer, but in August or September, there was a grant issued by the state. Situate was one of 20-something districts that were recipients. It was a $5 million grant for instructional coaching. And I'm wondering if that math coach that you were talking about during the budget presentation at Hope is or was funded through that grant.
That's correct.
What has that person accomplished?
So I can have the principal and the curriculum director do a full presentation, but she is working at Hope with the classroom teachers and with individual kids around math skills, and all of the feedback that, George, that I have gotten to this point has been extremely positive. Teachers feel like, huh?
They're trying to up the ride scores.
The teachers are reporting that the math coach has been very helpful in them examining their practice, increasing the rigor in the classroom. So all reports are that it's been extremely successful. We continue to track it. That's my response.
The reason I'm interested in this issue is, well, it's an issue I've been interested in for quite some time. The district's assessments in math, whether it's RICAS or PSATs or SATs, is frankly, like you would say, not meeting standards. A majority of the students at every grade level that is tested do not meet standards. I don't believe in the category 3 partially meets standards. To me, that is not meeting standards. But worse than that, exceeds standards is such a minuscule proportion of the student body that it cries out for attention. At the assessment, using the SAT as an assessment, you had 2 students in the high school last year who exceed standards. 2 out of 100. And I think that's shameful. And it's not a problem that occurred last year and the year before. It's not something that you can blame on COVID and remote learning. It's a problem that has persisted for 30 years in this district. You're not teaching kids math correctly. They're not meeting state standards. They're not meeting federal standards. They're not meeting accepted standards as determined by the College Board in the SATs. This has been an ongoing problem for as long as I've had kids in the school system, and my youngest is 38 years old. I'll tell you one quick story to close this. Somewhere between 25 and 30 years ago, there was a student at the high school who was known to be a math whiz by local standards, was valedictorian of their high school class, ended up going to a selective university that I had some familiarity with. And at the art festival, October, okay, 6 weeks into the semester, I ran into that student and asked, well, how's it going? And the response was, I'm going to flunk calculus. That's what a superstar by local standards faced when they went out into a selective university. It's been a problem forever, and it would be nice to have it addressed so that the students are prepared for what exists in the real world today. You're not meeting standards. You haven't been meeting standards for 30 years. Do something, please.
You've always been a big supporter of the schools and have always been concerned about how we perform. So, you know, your words are powerful, George, so thank you for sharing that.
Globally Lowell, 18 Pleasant Lane, Clayville. Just an idea for budget. I thought about it like with a finance like thing we were talking about maybe last month or the month before, but our electric bill, like in the town, is like, you know, of course, huge. But if you go around at schools at night and like you're volunteering, a lot of these smart TVs are on, a lot of lights are on in like rooms where there's nobody in them. And I know this is like a very basic thing, but just from like the sustainability committee in the town, like maybe a district wide, just like, can we be more conscious of this? But like at night when you're volunteering at schools, like there's a lot of lights on in rooms where there's not a custodian or there's not an activity or smart TVs are left on
So-
in classrooms, like
so
at night
If
in the evening.
if you can get me that specific information, because most, as I understand it, and I know this to be the case, most of the rooms have motion sensors. So
Yeah,
even in my office, if I don't
but a lot of
flap
the
around
smart TVs
sometime
be on.
at the
It's just-
desk, the lights go off in the office. I'm like,
Yeah.
hey, I'm still here.
But like a lot of these smart TVs, like every room has, the art one has one, like, it's just an idea, thinking of budgeting, like,
But sustainability as well. I
Yeah.
think there's a push that.
you know, but, so, and I had one more thing and now I forgot. but,
Sorry.
That's fine. I help you.
Thank you. So with that, obviously, we're going to have to table the state assessment data because our curriculum director could not make it tonight. And we have a budget to actual update from our finance director.
A quick audit update. The audit's closed. I thought I was gonna have the copies for you guys today, but they weren't
Good
there.
job, Stephanie, the audit is closed.
So I should have them for you maybe at the special meeting. There was no change to our mini surplus ending projection. We ended the 15-month fiscal year with the mini surplus of $3,543. So that's all set. A few notes on our budget to actual. We've utilized 5% of our budget at this point, and our spending in comparison to last year has flattened out during the month of February, as you can see on our graph. After salaries and benefits, our next biggest expenditure is our purchase services, which we've discussed in prior months due to the increase in outplaced students. I did want to, because I think it's a fun little nugget to remind everybody that it's a live document. So as I'm printing and, getting this up, we had a good change. We did have, in line 51135, a change in the projection. So we now have a mini surplus projected out into this year at this time. So just to be thoughtful that we're looking at it, but it's changing literally as I'm talking about it. So that's really it. Nothing's changed other than that.
Any questions from the school committee? I thought that our solicitor was going to present on the Rockland Oaks cost reimbursement. Or is that going to be someone else? No, he asked me if he could go. He was going to give us an update, so I guess we'll have to table that. The building committee members. Sure. So the building committee members we have in our packet, the people that have applied. And I'd like to make a recommendation that we accept all, so 4 members. Right? Yes, 1, 2, 3, 5.
Yep.
I'd like to make a motion to accept all the all 5 applicants.
Second?
Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. And then, Colleen, you would ask to have this put on the agenda for human resource staffing?
So have we looked into what are our options that are available to us for? I know we allocated a dollar amount of $50,000. Do we know what other districts our size are doing as far as HR or, how do we move forward from here?
So to the best of my knowledge, and I haven't done a deep dive into it, but to the best of my knowledge, every school district has an HR person, either a manager or a director, and some, of course, bigger districts have departments,
Sure.
right? Like departments. But everybody has somebody that is dedicated to doing some of that onboarding, offboarding, that's not. the
I know,
word.
no, but yeah,
It's getting late.
I
like,
know.
And there's a lot of pieces to the HR work specific to schools that is connected to RIDE. And additionally, things like the paraprofessionals and the teachers both have job fairs as their contract language. Those can be very complicated processes that you have to have somebody who is
No.
keeping track. Otherwise you can really mess those things up.
Who does that now?
I bring anybody that's breathing in my office and we do it together as a team because
I can't run away from you.
I'm like, well, we gotta do it. And I can't do it alone.
No,
So we just take everybody. We take everybody. And so there are those kinds of things. So I guess where we go from here is really if the committee wants us to pursue that position, we have an old job description. I can share it with the committee at the next meeting. And you decide if you want us to post it, and we'll do a little research around what we think we can get for the 50,000, and then we'll post it and see where we land.
Are you thinking of posting it next year when it's in the budget?
Yeah, we would have to, I mean,
Yeah,
yeah, we have to start, so, I mean,
I can't do it now.
no.
No, we've frozen the budget. I would never propose public parents that we go do that now.
Okay.
I strongly believe that it's something that, again, I'd love to have a full-time aide. I mean, we have what, over 200 employees, like we're the biggest employer in the town, obviously. Do we have the bandwidth to absorb a full-time HR director? Could we keep them busy? Probably.
Good.
But I don't know. I think we fractioned off a lot of it, but I think there's some big pieces that I don't want to say are missing, but I think it's putting a lot of responsibility, particularly on you as a superintendent. You went to school to be an educator first and an administrator second, not necessarily to be up to date on all aspects of labor law. And, you know, it's just,
I spent almost my entire day yesterday doing
Yeah.
HR stuff.
and that's the big
Which is
stuff, right?
fine.
But there's a lot of other stuff that, so I just feel as though at this point in time, I know we did have somebody at some point and then they left, and I don't know like where all those duties got absorbed to. But I think it's
Everybody's got a
I
little
think
piece of
as
it.
far
And that's
as-
a little worrisome too, when you've got all these
Yes.
hands in the HR pot.
Yeah.
It's easy for something to get dropped.
Sure.
Or a mistake to be made.
Mhm.
And those are not the places you want to make mistakes,
No,
right?
no.
And it's taking away time from the curriculum and educating our students where it belongs.
Richard
I-
Finnegan, Ridge Road.
I'm-
I think $50,000 is a bargain. The town has $45,000 just for a human resource manual, and they already spent 43, and we don't have a manual yet. So I would say if you can get somebody on board for $50,000, that's a bargain.
Yeah.
Today's
If we
dollars.
can, I'm kind of thinking it might be tricky, but if you can find out what the realistic number is.
So when I've done a little bit of digging, that 50,000 number wasn't far off, and I'm gonna dig a
For
little.
full-time or part-time?
I think they have full-time. So I think that if we massage the number of hours per day, like I'm always massaging something, that, you know, we can maybe entice somebody. You know, maybe there's somebody that just wants to work 4 hours a day, you know, and that might work for them. And so I think we're gonna have to be a little creative. And Situate is such a great place to work, right? Everybody that's listening out there, it really is a great place to work. So we can offer some life choice benefits that, you know, it's not Providence or Warwick, or some crazy places.
Not that those aren't lovely
Yeah,
places,
yeah,
but you're not,
I
just to
didn't
be clear, but
say
you're not
that.
working in the urban ring or there's certain,
Exactly. You know, it's
yeah.
a lovely place with
Yeah.
great people. And so, you know, I'll
Are you aware, Lori, and I can do some digging as well and give some feedback to you. Are there any companies that would be able to provide any
yes, there are.
form of, and so
Form of
they,
what?
They contact me all the time.
yeah, like not necessarily a temp agency, but more or less like are there bigger agencies out here that like HR firms? Do you know
That's what the town uses.
Right, and I'm not saying if, these are just options, right? Like, I don't want to just outsource everything. If we can have someone in-house to do something, that's even better. But looking at that money, do we have somebody in-house that maybe isn't, you know, have an advanced degree and, you know, administration, and we have a consultant that's 10 hours a week? I don't know. Do you know what I mean? I'm just kind of thinking of a hybrid. I'm open to anything that would alleviate, that would provide us what we need, while taking some of that. Again, there's that whole, it's just you. So if I'm your employee, Lori, unfortunately, and I don't like you,
Right.
it puts you in a very different, and that's not a great analogy, but it is, right? Like and you have to be involved in every single piece of employee, where if there was another person that, and again, our principals are involved, but back to that, our principals went to school to be educators and administrators, not, we need,
I prefer it all be an outside agency as opposed to having someone in the Situate School Department saying, you know, I'll do part of the HR stuff. I think it's best for this 50,000 if we hire another person outside of the Situate School Department? I
Like-
thought you were referencing Reading.
I'm looking at like just I'm thinking out loud, honestly. So you're talking not just so there's contract companies, right, which could be a piece of possibly or a place to look at to investigate, and then there would be hiring, not taking somebody from within.
Correct.
Hiring an employee of the school department. We're not getting anybody full time with 50 grand, but
Right.
you know what I mean, like that type of. So those are kind of my thoughts.
Yeah, I agree.
I agree. I'm never gonna tell you it's not a need. It definitely is a need in the district. So, you know, if the committee's charge to me is to investigate all of that, and I will investigate outside agencies that provide services. But from that, I need boots on the ground, you know, work being done. I don't need a manual.
Right.
I need the work done in the office, and 50,000 is what I have for the year. So I get nervous when
Yeah.
talking about outside agencies. It all, generally, my experience has been, it all looks great when they're trying to get you to sign the contract. And yes, we can do that for 50,000, and 50 grows into 70 and then 80. That's been my experience.
Michael Smith, 2-4 in Hope Furnace. The point a lot of you guys are making, which I think is really important, is to take some off of Lori so she can get back to her real job and also their principals. But I think the thing we're really missing is the HR position is actually to protect the company,
Mhm.
the district
Mhm.
from liability.
Exactly.
So the issue we have is going back to the point you kind of made, that terrible analogy here of, oh, the employee is really mad at Lori. The fact is who do they go to if they feel that their rights have been violated or
Correct.
they're unhappy? Who are they going to? They're going to Lori. That's not right either.
Correct.
She's in a bad position. The staff isn't getting what they need. So I know you guys are really adamant about this, which I'm really happy to hear, but please don't go kind of like Richard's saying with the town has been working on a manual.
Yeah, no, yeah.
And I've been to those meetings. It's brutal. The amount of money they've spent on this and nothing's gotten done. This HR position actually could be perfect for that survey that we're looking for, which
Yes.
maybe you have an update on that and when you come up, I don't know. But I know because Bobby, I don't know if she's on the call or not, but I'm sure she'd bring it up again. If we're paying someone to do a survey, we should already have that done already. So HR, that position would help though. So
Employee
I think it's more
relations,
just-
that's a whole other piece that we didn't even touch on,
yeah,
right? Like,
it's the liability is what we gotta worry about. I think. We don't have any money. We don't want to lose the money we do have.
Before I forget, and it's a little off topic, at the 26th meeting, are you going to also bring forward a capital budget?
Kim?
Okay. So any more discussion from the school committee or anyone else on the human resource? Do I have a motion to accept the second reading of policy 8215 Situate CTE admissions?
so moved.
Any discussion?
You just need a second, I think.
Almost got it
I
in.
just wonder, where are these policies? Are they the old policies? Or, because I tried to look online.
Are they not on
They should.
as well?
I just saw the old policies. I didn't see any new policies.
They are.
Where are they?
They're-
They're links.
That's why.
Oh, they're links. And like what, you're on Workbase? Oh, clerk.
That's the clerk base section.
Well, she said so moved.
Yeah, then second. Right.
Second. Oh, you got that?
Yeah, there was.
I get discombobulated. All in favor?
Aye.
Do I have a motion to accept the first read of policy 4010 Situate School Department Title I Parent and Family Engagement?
So moved.
Do I have any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Do I have a motion to accept the first read of policy 1030 Situate Committee Powers and Duties?
Second. So
Yeah,
I'm messing up now. I'm just gonna pipe down, jump in. Lauren.
No, you're good.
No, it's me.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Flaps.
I'd like to make a motion to accept the first reading of policy 8055 Student Directory Information and Student Records with the following corrections. want to amend and correct on the second page at the top where it says page 1 of 2, it should just say page 2. And also on that same second page, I want it to replace where it says Smithfield Public Schools with SSD. Obviously, we adopted this policy from Smithfield with their permission, and that's just 2 typos. So do I have a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Do I have a motion to accept the first read of policy 2020, powers and duties of the superintendent?
So moved?
Second. Oh,
All in favor?
Aye.
aye.
And motion to accept the first reading of policy 2025, powers and duties of school principals?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Oh, I forgot this. Did I forget?
Nope, you were.
Okay.
No, you're good.
And motion to accept the first reading of policy 1040, Situate School Committee policies.
Second.
Any discussion?
Sorry.
All in favor?
Aye.
Which one?
Oh, it's just a discussion. Yeah, we didn't have to vote on anything. And do I have any announcements?
Can I make an announcement?
Sure.
Oh, good. The PR firm that we use for the district and for the CTE notices is also, they do a lot of other work. They do some HR work. They also do some school climate surveys work and have done that in other districts. So they are in the process of constructing the survey that we have talked about with parents over the last few months. I would expect that to be completed and ready for presentation to the committee within a few weeks.
And it's my understanding that strategically they want that survey to go out at the end of March, maybe beginning of April, due to different school vacations. And their research and experience has proven that they would get the best results sending that survey out at that time, as opposed to too close to either vacation where you get a different mindset. So that, and it's a great PR firm that we have hired, because 30 of their 35 employees are HR people. It's an HR firm that also has a media group that works together with them, because they have found that combination is really helpful all around. So it is in the works. It's being held off on purpose for the best outcomes according to different school vacation timing. On that note, do I have a motion to adjourn?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you, everyone, for a long night.